11 anime like Game of Thrones that will take you on a thrilling adventure. Dark adventure shows brimming with violence often take the world by storm. HBO's Game of Thrones was no exception after it got its live-action adaptation of George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. The show brought us some of the craziest politics and complex characters in television, alongside a phenomenal soundtrack composed by Ramin Djawadi. Unfortunately, its ending was not very well received, and rightfully so, since it managed to rain on plots it had built up throughout 8 seasons. While the show ended on a sour note, it did not change the fact that it had us by our throats for the longest time, making the people pine for more shows that would hit them with the same roller coaster of emotions. While it is not very easy to find a show like Game of Thrones, handing the baton over to Japan does the trick. And in this video, we will tell you about 11 such Japanese anime that you should definitely check out if you want to go on the same thrilling adventure as the one Game of Thrones had taken you on. Number 1. Arslan Senki. Although based on a Persian epic known as Amir Arsalan, Yoshiki Tanaka's Arslan Senki finds itself mirroring a lot of themes present throughout Game of Thrones. Set in a fictional Persia known as Pars, Arslan hailed from the family of a knight. However, he attained royal status at the age of 5 when he was adopted by the house of Kay Khosraw. Their land would go on to be invaded by the kingdom of Lusitania, prompting Arslan to step up and strike back at the enemy eventually. However, striking back isn't the easiest when one is plagued by their moral compass in an immoral world, making Arslan go through struggles similar to that of Robb Stark, who could not bring himself to fall to the corrupt practices of his time. Not only that, but with Arslan's father getting imprisoned, he had to independently take his land back, much like the Starks who lost their habitat with the death of Ned Stark, and like stray wolves, had to find their way back to Winterfell. Not that everyone made it, because we all remember how the Red Wedding went. Of course, Pars itself is not exempt from its immoral practices, especially with its association with slavery. Like Daenerys in Slaver's Bay, Arslan finds himself trying to abolish this horrific institution, and unfortunately for him, he has to do it without dragons. All in all, thematic similarities with Game of Thrones, a historical setting, complexities experienced by the characters, and the dominance of armed conflict makes Arslan Senki a suitable anime for those who are seeking a similar thrill. On the bright side, Arslan would go on to become the king of Pars instead of being abruptly killed for not marrying someone's daughter. Number 2. Vinland Saga. Makoto Yukimura's Vinland Saga brings to us another renowned story within a historical setting in the realm of anime. Like Arslan Senki, it takes us to a land that has been conquered. In this case, England in 1013 AD gets conquered by King Sven Forkbeard from Denmark. The story primarily retells Viking legends, allowing the show to enter deep into the territory of violence like Game of Thrones. The main character Thorfinn also happens to possess a penchant for violence, quite like the mother of dragons herself, although their execution proves to be quite different. Just like the Starks who had to deal with the death of their father Ned Stark, Thorfinn witnesses his father having to sacrifice himself. He might not have made a mental list of people to kill in order to avenge his loved ones like Arya did, but he did dive headfirst into a rough life to avenge his father. The show proves itself to be no stranger to the complicated storylines clashing and getting entangled with each other while being victims of dirty politics. It also brims the plot twists. On the bright side, Askeladd, the person Thorfinn wanted to kill, pays for his sins by being forced to make a sacrifice against his will for someone else, becoming a victim of his own negative karma. Meanwhile, Thorfinn, like Robb Stark, wishes for a life of peace, but of course, life has other plans for him. Out of everything, the biggest similarity between the two shows lies in the fact that the people who have read the original material have criticized the adaptations of the books and the manga. Number 3. Kingdom. Kingdom is an adaptation of Yasuhisa Hara's manga of the same name. Needless to say, the story has a historical setting, and its title does a good enough job of giving away its genre. Based on the Warring States period of China, Kingdom boasts character based on historical figures. Like Westeros, which had been conquered by Aegon Targaryen, well, most of it, Kingdom also witnesses the unification of China via conquests. War orphans Jin and Pao work in the kingdom of Qin as servants, training regularly to become the great generals of the heavens. Not the easiest thing to do when you are a lowly slave. However, Kingdom's story gets more exciting after Pao is used as a body double for the king of the land during a power struggle for the throne. Naturally, Pao is mortally wounded as a result. Though Jin's journey starts with his rage towards the king, he changes his mind to seize the opportunity. It wasn't every day that a slave found the opportunity to become a general in the royal army, and Jin knew he could do it by getting into the good graces of the king. And so, he helps the king with his ambitions while he himself wishes to become the greatest general in the world one day. As such, he helps the king unify the world, hoping to bring an end to the incessant warfare present within the current world. Number 4. Code Geass. Unlike most anime, Code Geass is not based on a manga. On the flip side, the manga is based on the anime. The story boasts one of the most renowned main characters in anime, Rurouni v Britannia, a brilliant student who one day gains a powerful eye known as the Geass. This is an eye that evokes complete obedience as it allows Rurouni to control people on command, although within limitations. Rurouni is an exiled Britannian prince living in a Japan that has been taken over by the Holy Britannian Empire, thanks to their use of gigantic mecha robots. When Rurouni meets a mysterious woman named Cece, he gains the power of the Geass and uses it to manipulate his opponents like a game of chess, hoping to free Japan. But the root cause behind his actions date back to his horrendous life as a young prince in the Britannian Empire and his issues with his father. Things get way too complicated when Rurouni's childhood Japanese best friend, Suzaku Kururugi, becomes a fighter for Britannia against Japan, while Rurouni finds himself in the opposite situation, and unfortunately, he needs to keep hiding it from Kururugi. Although Rurouni strongly believes in his cause and possesses the ability to love in depth, he goes down in a self-created rabbit hole as he becomes more and more anti-heroic throughout the course of the story. If you love severe political conflicts as your main course, high-tech fights with huge mechanical robots as a side dish, and betrayals for dessert, Code Geass is a terrific choice for you. Number 5. Berserk, 1997. Often deemed as one of the best mangas ever with brilliant artwork, a main character who has suffered more than any other, and a terrific villain, Kento Miura's Berserk, is the perfect choice in terms of anime for viewers who are looking for something similar to Game of Thrones. Except lovers of the manga love Berserk way more than Game of Thrones or anything else for that matter. They are also quite bitter about the anime since the adaptations do little justice to the source material. The main character, Guts, is a lone mercenary warrior. He becomes an unlikely friend to the antagonist Griffith, who rises to power with his aspirations of ruling a kingdom and eventually experiences his descent into madness. So if you enjoyed the Targaryens' fall to insanity, Griffith has something intense in store for you. While Griffith has a goal in his mind, Guts wanders across the Midlands looking for battles, only to be defeated by Griffith, causing Guts to join his defeaters group, Band of the Hawk. Despite his success within the group, he overhears Griffith when he explains how a true friend has a dream of their own. Naturally, Guts decides to stop serving someone else's dreams and leave the Band of the Hawks. Griffith does not take his departure lightly. The Hawks soon become outlaws while Griffith experiences his descent into insanity and almost commits suicide. However, a discovery leads him to activate an event, sacrificing his comrades and being reborn as the 5th God Hand member. With his new power, Griffith makes Guts experience some of the worst things a human can imagine, prompting Guts to seek revenge against his old friend. Number 6. Attack on Titan. It is not uncommon for shows to be dark, have lots of violence, and portray political corruption. Not that these things do not tie Game of Thrones with Attack on Titan, but the ultimate common denominator between the two shows is definitely the fact that they revel in some of the craziest plot twists ever. Hajime Isayama's Attack on Titan follows the story of a boy named Eren Yeager, whose world has been overrun by zombie-like monsters known as the Titans. What separates the remnants of humanity from the threat outside are gigantic walls similar to what you see in Game of Thrones. However, neither of the two stories are just a case of humans versus zombies, as the world within the walls and outside of it is plagued by mysteries, political warfare, corruption, and an excess of violence. While Jon Snow is more gentle, Eren goes the Arya Stark way as he swears revenge upon the Titans following his mother's death, though Eren is a lot more aggressive as he desperately keeps charging forward in his quest for revenge and freedom. It is hard to categorize Game of Thrones into one genre, and Attack on Titan experiences the same fate as a show which dives into several themes throughout all of its seasons. So much so that the show officially changes its primary genre following a plot twist in Season 3. The show continuously hits the viewers with betrayals, twists, and an incredible soundtrack scored by Hiroyuki Sawano, and neither of the three rest even for a second to let you have a breather. Number 7. Saga of Tanya the Evil. If you love characters like Cersei and Tywin Lannister, here's a great series for you. Carlo Zen's light novel series The Saga of Tanya the Evil enters isekai territory as a show that witnesses a ruthless atheist salaryman from Japan finding himself as a little girl in a world of magical warfare. Due to his relentless behavior and lack of faith in God, he receives his punishment as he is reincarnated into a world where he is bound to face severe hardships. Known as Tanya in this new world of what seems to be Imperial Germany, the sins she had committed in her previous world continue to haunt her as she has to deal with the threat of her soul leaving the cycle of reincarnation and being sent to hell. As such, Tanya dedicates herself to avoiding death and joined the Empire's Mage Corps. Now a little girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, Tanya's ruthlessness as a person contrasts with her appearance. She rises through the ranks of the Mage Corps to stay away from the main action, hoping to prolong her lifeline. Kind of how the pawns in a game of chess are, the first players to risk their lives while the more powerful pieces in the hierarchy remain protected for longer. In this journey, she adopts the most cold-hearted methods as a soldier and begins to put her career above the well-being of the people. And the last thing you want to do now is to get on her bad side. Number 8. The Rising of Shield Hero. Aneko Usagi brings us to another isekai series with the Rising of Shield Hero, and it holds an appropriate spot in this list due to the unfair politics and tragic portrayals that prevail in the story, much like Game of Thrones itself. Like Jon Snow, who navigated a cruel world as the bastard son of Ned Stark, Naofumi becomes the victim of a cruel regime where there's always someone above him, higher up on the ladder, ready to trip him. What's worse is he used to be an easygoing young guy in Japan before being sent to a parallel world to fight interdimensional monsters and become a cardinal hero. This once again draws a parallel between his story with that of Jon Snow's, who was sent to the Night's Watch and had to fight hordes of White Walkers. But unfortunately, Naofumi never volunteered to be in this position, unlike Jon Snow, who chose to join the Watch to escape his social position as a bastard. While he was not the only one who was isekai to be a cardinal hero, he got the shorter end of the stick since the others had strong support from the kingdom and the allies, while his companion, the princess, falsely accused him of assaulting her. As such, she stole his belongings and left him high and dry. And with his new reputation, he was shunned by everyone in society. Naofumi eventually found himself as an underdog in the story, where he had to persevere to win back the people's support and unravel the mysteries of the monsters. Number 9. Overlord. 2010 brought us the anime adaptation of Kugane Maruyama's light novel series Overlord, with a plot you might find slightly familiar if you have watched the Japanese web series Alice in Borderland. The story follows an office worker from 2126 who ardently plays a highly interactive video game called Yggdrasil and operates as his guild's overlord named Momoga. In fact, he has dedicated most of his life to the world he built within the game, and while most of the guild members have left or are semi-active, he calls for them one last time after the game's servers decide to shut it down. Towards the end, however, Momoga's members exit the game, but he finds that it still has not shut down like it was supposed to. He comes to realize that he has been transported to the world of the game, and its NPCs, or non-playable characters, have become actual living beings. Now trapped in his avatar, Momoga cannot log out or interact with others via general message. As such, he sets out on a quest to find others like him within this new realm. However, he also finds himself in a strange moral position as the game modifies his sense of morality, making him devoid or remorse after killing someone or doing things that he would have previously considered to be taboo in the real world. Game of Thrones in particular seems to be a show where killing someone is as normalized as eating bread for breakfast. Just because a character kills does not make them a bad person within the fabric of the show, and a similar situation applies to Overlord, who does not exactly experience a descent of his morality like Baruch from Code Geass, but just has his brain modified by the logic of his new world. Number 10. Fate Zero. Fate/Zero is a fantasy thriller and action anime that follows visual novels written by Gen Urobuchi. It is a prequel to Fate/Stay Night. Set 10 years before the events of Stay Night, Fate/Zero dives into the Fourth Holy Grail War. This war is a magical tournament where magicians who are reincarnations of legendary souls battle one another to their deaths to obtain a chalice called the Holy Grail. This chalice can grant any wish. The Einspren family has always lost in this battle royale, and this time they are determined to win against the others, which happens to be a common theme throughout Game of Thrones, albeit not for a wish-granting chalice. The family hired the infamous assassin Kiritsugu Emiya to represent them, and he trains with the Einspren family for 8 years. However, he finds formidable opponents in the other 6 families who will be participating in the deadly battle as well. Fate/Zero does a great job of introducing the bigger picture that extends into the story of Fate/Stay Night. One of the producers of the anime is Ufotable, which is the studio responsible for animating Demon Slayer, so you could assume the level of animation the show possesses. It is amplified by the music scoring of renowned Japanese composer Yuki Kajiura, who has worked on anime such as Sword Art Online, Fist of the North Star, Demon Slayer, and Erased. Number 11. Death Note. The last entry on our list is quite possibly one of the most popular anime to ever exist, alongside the likes of Dragon Ball and Pokemon. Often perceived to be the gateway into anime, Death Note meshes the regular world with that of Shinigamis or Grim Reapers, as genius student Light Yagami finds Ryuk's Death Note, which allows him to kill anyone by writing their names in it. He starts using it to kill criminals, ridding the world of its crime-causing pest, and in the process becomes the very thing he hated the most. The series of crimes also bring him against another genius, the unconventional Detective L, who despite being unaware of the fantasy workings at play, comes close to solving the case. Like Game of Thrones, Death Note witnesses a tense battle of wits, primarily between Light and L, who constantly try to one-up each other. However, because L's real name is not known, Light could not write his name in his death note and kill him to get rid of his biggest obstacle. The show is also known for its impeccable pacing. It is slow enough to build tension and fast enough to keep the audience on the edge of their seats. Light Yagami, being the most wanted criminal while being the son of a police officer, catapults the stakes throughout the show. It is complex enough to be layered and simple enough for anyone to understand, making Death Note appropriate as a beginner's anime. Marvelous verdict. We all love a good comfort show, but there is just something so special about vast storylines with complex lore that could suck the audience right in. The experience also proves to be an unforgettable one, making us crave shows that can evoke the same feelings within us. In today's age and time, we do not have to stick to the availability of content within one language or media anymore, and as such, it opens us to a whole new world of content that we could dive into. As such, fans of Game of Thrones find the same adrenaline rush once again in anime. With that, today's video comes to an end. What did you think of these 11 anime? Did you enjoy this video? If yes, don't forget to like and comment on this video. Till then, goodbye and have a nice one.